Romance is a very popular genre for visual novels, and that's both good and bad. I've read quite a lot of romance visual novels, and I wanted to share to you 5 particular titles in the romance genre. The very first romance visual novel I've ever read, what I consider to be the absolute worst one I've read, my personal favorite, what many would consider the most controversial romance visual novel out there, and what I consider to be one of the best romance visual novels of all time. Hi, my name is August, and let me start off by telling you why Sugar Style is the worst romance visual novel I've ever read. Sugar Style has one of the most anime rom-com settings and premise. It then follows itself up with, no surprise, the most anime rom-com tropes and tricks in the book. And to think, being set in a university with adult characters might have changed things up a bit. The last I was wrong. Sugar Style follows our main character Kazuki Oribe as he finds himself in either the most luckiest position of his life or the most unfortunate circumstance of his own survival. Being the only male in an all-female university dorm. Cue all the weird, crazy, and absurd adventures from living the college dorm experience in his search to fall in love and get a girlfriend. Not exactly the most original setup. To its credit, its wacky antics is the strongest point. Sugar Style is immature, outrageous, and free-spirited. It does not hold back on how dumb things can get, and the developers are known for it. Sugar Style was made by Smee, known for other similar works like For Arava and Making Lovers. It's very clear what the main appeal is. If loud, outlandish jokes with crass humor and typical harem rom-com situations is not your thing, you will not like this. I don't mind this type of humor, but one can take so many corny tropey jokes and the silliness from the main character's sex-crazed antics. You think being a young adult there would be at least some level of maturity, at least for a college student, but you could swap them for being high schoolers and there would be like no difference. There's also the fact that I've read other titles far more outlandish and crazier in comedy content. In comparison, Sugar Style just lacks style, and it's not unique either, unless you count being the first visual novel I've had to complain about an overusage of joke sound effects. Definitely a crutch. I'm also not a fan of how Sugar Style's story progresses. It mixes up common route segments, special events, and heroine route scenes all together, which breaks the flow of reading, and it's cumbersome to skip through previously read sections just to get to another route. My greatest preference in a multi-heroine route romance visual novel is a dedicated, uninterrupted route. It's less distracting and disorienting narratively compared to what was going on here. However, the biggest fault Sugar Style has, in my opinion, is that the heroines are just okay. None of them really captivated me in a special way compared to other heroines in other romance visual novels I've read, and arguably, that's the worst spot to be in. At least if I hated a character, there's a specific reason why, but being forgettable is fatal. Sugar Style is a visual novel I read a long time ago, and it just has not aged well. In fact, it may be nothing worth talking about in comparison to what is probably the most controversial romance visual novels of all time, School Days. This one is a very infamous title. School Days, a romance drama love triangle story, remembered fondly due to its jaw-dropping and celebratory bad endings. Even to this day, people still reference the iconic nice boat scene, in which the final episode of the anime was cancelled and replaced with stock footage of a ferry due to a girl killing her father with an axe the day before the episode's airing, given the contents. School Days is bold, and it adds on to that by having the most frustratingly punchable protagonist ever. The story follows Makoto Ito as his affection wavers between two girls, Kotonoha, his distant crush, and Sekai, his friendly classmate who helped Makoto and Kotonoha get together. Not only is that messy on paper, Makoto only makes things worse by being an unrestrained, horny teenage brat. And when he's not doing that, he's being a pushover and is just plain boring. In the worst cases, he's dishonest, rash, selfish, and most of all, romantically indecisive, with no regard for the harm and consequences that may occur. The girls, unfortunately, are stuck dealing with his actions, and how they react makes everything worse, taking it out on each other in the most extreme cases in the most extreme ways. It's very upsetting and even morally questionable. And yet, despite all of that, there are some that argue that School Days is actually genius. From a more well-reasoned argument, you could say that School Days is amazing for how it subverts expectations by its endings, while also delivering one of the most satisfying payoffs at the very end. Hell, even in the good endings, you could argue that a highlight is how Makoto eventually shows growth. But man, it's just not worth it. I sat through the most visually boring and infuriating garbage I've ever read in romance just to get to those 4 bad endings out of the 22 of them. Only in those bad endings can you get that cathartic emotional payoff as a result of the consequences, where the man fully deserves what's coming to him. I don't recommend this to anyone looking for a nice slice of life romance, just the people who enjoy seeing pure soap opera chaos. What I will recommend though is a visual novel that I hold especially in high regard as a personal favorite. A story that blends all of my favorite romance tropes and traits I very much like to one emotional tale. Cyanotype Daydream. Specifically, Case Zero. Now, this visual novel is a sci-fi drama romance, but it's structured in an interesting way. You are introduced to a collection of cases that ultimately provide deeper meaning to its overarching main romance story. While each of these individual stories are compelling on their own and are worth talking about, my favorite couple dynamic lies in the grander story this visual novel wants to tell. Case Zero is set in a post-apocalyptic world where humans hide away in shelter cities to shield themselves from sunlight, natural light that now harms people due to their genetic mutations over time. Here, society is separated into different social classes with their own respective roles. The story follows a young Kaito as he works to become an inventor, in order for him to move up in the social ladder to earn enough money to hire a doctor to heal his ill mother. Everything begins to change, however, when one day he meets a young girl named Yonagi, drawn to him and his gadgets. She invites him to study under a renowned teacher she knows, bringing Kaito's dream of saving his mother within reach, unaware of the harsh difficulties he and Yonagi will face together. Cyanotype Daydream's Case Zero introduces us to Kaito and Yonagi's world, a post-apocalyptic setting where the background details are deliberate and meaningful. Everything about their life circumstances defines their personalities and what drives them forward. I found it genuinely heartwarming watching them grow up together, from kids to teenagers to young adults, as their life changes and their relationship deepens. Their lives changing makes their bond more stronger, and yet also more fragile. Seeing their eventual clash was just inevitable as a result of who they are. The both of them are motivated by love, however, the way they pursue their ambitions puts them at odds between each other. That conflict becomes a source of so much tension in Cyanotype Daydream, pushing them through difficult choices and painful mistakes that constantly threaten what they have together. It's a super intriguing situation to watch unfold, and equally heartbreaking to see the consequences from the decisions they make. What's also impressive is that the earlier story cases echo Kaito and Yonagi in meaningful ways, each one carrying its own emotional weight, character parallels, and intent behind those stories. Cyanotype Daydream's Case Zero, from the presentation to the story writing to the visuals, just took me on an emotional roller coaster. It's powerful, inspiring, and deeply romantic, and I highly recommend it to everyone. But what really sells it for me specifically is how its characters confront the hardest, most bittersweet questions imaginable, and watching that is just something I live for in romance fiction. All that said, while a super heavy drama romance is my absolute joy in the world, at the same time, I'm also a fan of super wholesome rom-coms too, which is why I want to follow up with a visual novel that is both my first ever romance visual novel, as well as one of the first visual novels I've ever read, Sabbat of the Witch or Son of a Witch. Really, it's got everything for an anime-styled romance. Cute girls, fluffy romance, and emotional confessions. And it all started with a witch with an unusually lewd contract. Son of a Witch features Nene Ayachi, an ordinary girl that unfortunately suffers under uncontrollable fits of lust. The price she pays in order to fulfill her witch contract to grant her wish. And to add on to that misfortune, our main character Shuji Hoshina accidentally stumbles into Nene during one of her episodes. As an apology, Shuji decides to help Nene with her mission to help people with their life problems in order to gather enough emotional energy to fulfill the witch's contract, including his own problems. Now, for a story that starts out with a silly premise that screams lewd anime rom-com, Son of a Witch actually gets pretty drama intensive and emotionally heartwarming. Yes, there are some silly, lighthearted moments caused by these antics. However, this whole visual novel is blanketed with wholesome, empathetic vibes and uplifting positive messages about helping others. Everyone in here has their own personal issues that they're going through, and yet all of them makes an effort to reach out and help other people with theirs. It's super sweet. How it syncs up in both romantic chemistry and personal growth is also really nice too. Outside of this, the game is just absolutely charming. Son of a Witch went out of their way to make these girls in here so adorably cute and explosively reactive. They each have their own unique quirks to them, whether that's being easily embarrassed or being endearingly clingy. All of them are designed to just fill you with that warm sweetness and affection. That blend of its two sides sold me when I first read Son of a Witch. It's got wholesome romantic vibes that made me fall in love with the characters, but it also has that endearing, meaningful side that made it all so memorable. To this day, I still hold Meguru and her route as one of the cutest visual novel heroines out there, and Nene's route is entirely worth picking up Son of a Witch just for her story. It may have been years since I first read Son of a Witch, but it still holds a special place in my heart, and one that made me a dedicated Ubisoft fan forever. But nostalgia aside, while I hold Son of a Witch in high regard, it doesn't match up to what I consider to be one of the best romance visual novels out there, White Album 2. The peak of visual novel stories, not only as a romance drama masterpiece, but also as one of the highest rated visual novels of all time. The story follows Haruki Kitahara, a third-year high school member of the Light Music Club who dreams of performing an original song on concert stage. With only 30 days left until the Culture Festival, he recruits two female members, Setsuna Ogino, the school's renowned idol, and Kazusa Toma, the standoffish piano prodigy. As the three work together to make the festival a success, their lives become more intertwined with one another, resulting in a vicious love triangle that will haunt them beyond their high school years. White Album 2 isn't your typical wholesome, sweet anime rom-com story. It's a harsh, bittersweet, realistic look into human relationships, with all the ugly emotions shown off on full display. A devastating, tragic romance between three friends who don't want to hurt each other. What makes this work is how well portrayed these characters are as very flawed individuals. Here you see a full breakdown of their personalities, showing each person's inner beliefs, feelings, motivations, insecurities, and then the actions they choose to take or even not take. After all, the trio's friendship is perfectly solid, but any one of them pursuing love despite how much they want it will cause it all to come crashing down. It's how these three interact with each other, being aware of all of this, that makes White Album 2 super interesting to watch. The writing reflects this too in how the dialogue conveys not only directly spoken mannerisms, but the unspoken true thoughts shrouded behind each word. Some of them will even outright lie to themselves without even being conscious of it. It's some really great stuff. No matter what decision these characters make, there are very clear consequences. Love can make any sane person act in irrational and unforgivable ways, but here it's all perfectly in character too. What makes this even worse though, is that White Album 2 then delivers it in this elaborately constructed, excessively dramatic way to hit you where it hurts. And yet, for as much as White Album 2 has its characters endure through the absolute worst, it's seeing them achieve happiness at the very end that makes it so emotionally satisfying. White Album 2, an absolute must-read, both as one of the best romance visual novels out there and as one of my all-time favorites. I would like to thank everyone on Patreon for supporting me and covering visual novels. You guys are fantastic, and if you'd like to be a part of that effort, please consider subscribing. Now, if you're interested in more videos like this, you might want to check out this one over here, or checking this one out for more of a general visual novel recommendation.